You are the words and the music. You are the song that I sing. You are the melody. You are the harmony. Praise to your name I will bring. You are the Lord of lords. You are the mighty God. You are the King of all kings. So now I give back to you the song that you gave to me. You are the song that I sing.
You got your Bibles, and you're supposed to, because it is Sunday, it's the Lord's Day. I hope you're using them every day. I hope you're following up with your daily Bible reading and trying to do that, and just to see. How many of you are still doing your daily Bible reading? How many of you are not necessarily caught up where you're supposed to be? I think we're supposed to be like in Job, close to Job 35 or something like that. How many? Let me see them. Good. Let's continue to do that, because the more we do that, the more we understand, choosing His way is the right way, looking at it from His point of view. And as we looked in the lesson last week, as we began to talk about some things, we looked at chapter 7 of Proverbs. And in chapter 7 of Proverbs, if you look in verse 6, is where it starts. Solomon is talking to a young boy, his son, and listen to what he says. For at the window of my house I have looked out through my lattice, and I have seen among the simple, I have perceived among the youths, a young man lacking sense, passing along the street near her corner, taking the road to her house in the twilight, in the evening, at the time of night and darkness. And behold, the woman meets him there, dressed as a prostitute, willy of heart. She's loud and wayward. Her feet do not stay at home. And we watch as this young woman seduces this young man who, according to Solomon, says is lacking sense, who he's not really thinking, he's not focused on what he's supposed to be doing. And Solomon says, I'm watching this as it happens. I'm watching this as it plays out. And I watch as this young woman seduces this young man. And then you continue on reading in verse 21. With much seductive speech she persuades him. With her smooth talk she compels him. All at once he follows her as an ox goes to the slaughter, or as a stag is caught fast, till an arrow pierces his liver as a bird rushes into a snare. He does not know what it will cost him, and that it will cost him his life. And we watch as this young man just gets caught up and is pulled away into this temptation. And Solomon says that I'm able to watch this and see this firsthand, and I want to tell you this, my son, so that you don't fall into the same trap. We talked last week about how we try to see things from a different perspective, how we're trying to view things the way God would have us to view. And we looked at a Hebrew word here, the Hebrew word that is used in this text here, in some passages where we look at the Ahkhareet. Now, the Ahkhareet is the word that is used to describe the back, something that is behind us. And we looked at how the Hebrew and these other Semitic languages will give you a word that means the head, meaning first, something that is head of the class, like we would use today. The word used for side by side means hand by hand or elbow to elbow. The word face to face means you're facing someone, and the word face is used there. And the word Ahkhareet is used here, as Solomon says, I've watched the Ahkhareet. I've watched the end result of what's about to happen. And as we look at this Ahkhareet, we want to see how we can live our life in view of this. We want to see how we can live our life in view of this end of things, so that we can see the end result. Because what we have is we have God looking at life, and He sees all the mistakes that we can make, and He sees the results of the people of the nation of Israel. You can go on back to the way of Adam and Cain and the other Noah and the people of Noah's day, and you keep going back all the way through the Old Testament. And God says, I know how humanity works. I know what your likes are. I know what your dislikes are. I know what tempts you. I know what makes you angry, because I created you. I know your ins and outs. We're going to look at some verses where He says, I know your ways. I know how you walk. I know everything about you. I know the very numbers of your that are on your hair, of numbers of hair on your head. See, that just bothers me. I guess I can't even get it out. You know? So we look at those things and God says, I know all of those things about you, and I can see. I can see when you start walking in the way that you shouldn't, and I can see when you're walking into a trap. So I want to cry out to you, and I want to show you how not to do that. And chapter 8 gives us a little bit of leeway into that. It tells us about wisdom crying out and what wisdom does. Instead of lacking sense or lacking wisdom, there in chapter 7, here he says this is what wisdom is. And we know from James that if you lack wisdom, what do? You ask of God, who gives to all men liberally. God is willing to give it to us. So we walk into this trap. So to teach us to not walk into the trap, we got to have a plan. And we look facetiously at it, maybe one of those step-by-step plans. If this does this, this is what we do. And this does this, this is what we say. Like those suicide hotlines and how those work. But then when you look at something along the lines of where we're going to eat, we looked at that. Where we're going to go for lunch. And we thought that was kind of cute and kind of funny. But we look at it, but that's how it works sometimes. That's how it works, is how we're going to decide. We need to know what we're going to do here in this situation, and we need to know ahead of time. Because if we don't know ahead of time, we're just getting ourselves deeper and deeper and deeper into that trap. So after we've established the plan, that's where we pick up this morning. We got to see things from his point of view. We got to look at it from a different perspective. Look at this verse with me here. Isaiah 55, 8 and 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as far as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts. God says, when you look at this idea, as far as the heavens, or as high as the heavens are from the earth. That's a long way, isn't it? That's a long way. Because when you look at this word heavens and you try to describe the word heavens, it's a very vast word. I mean, you can talk about, the Jews had different concepts of heaven. There was one concept where there's 7 levels of heaven. There's another concept that's more common among the Jews, was that there were 3 layers of heaven. One, you had the sky where the birds would reign, and birds would fly, and then above that you would have the heavens where the stars, where the planets are, where the sun and the moon are, and then beyond that would be the residence of God. That would be far beyond that. And God, that's a long way away. He says, as far as the heavens are from the earth, that's my ways compared to your ways. See, they're totally different. We're looking at a figure who cannot sin because it's against his nature. We're looking at a figure who is the omnipotent one, who is perfect in all of aspects of goodness and love. And then we look at us, and we see how small we are. Are we important in His plan? Absolutely. Are we worthy? No. We're not worthy of what all He does for us. But He loves us enough to show us. And He says, this is my ways, and this is your ways. And there is a huge expanse between the two that we've got to make sure you understand. So if you hear Him say something along the lines of, I'm really much smarter than you, so listen to my way. I'm really much more educated than you. I created education. I created the term. I created the concept. I am so much greater than you, and He's not doing it to be braggadatory. He's not doing it to be prideful, to show us how puny we are. He's saying that along the lines of, let me help you. Let me help you. Let me just show you my way. Because as I'm watching, I can see it all laid out. I can see it all unfold. And I'm wanting to reveal to you what is best for you. If you will just stop what you're doing, press that pause button in your life, and take a step back and begin to view things with a bigger perspective in mind. You see, what we see is, I like jigsaw puzzles. We've talked about this. I like jigsaw puzzles. When you first start that 5,000 piece or that 1,000 piece jigsaw puzzle, they're all just thrown. When you open the box and just dump them out, the things I hate to do the most is to flip them all over so you can see all the right sides. You got to flip 500 different pieces over and over and over again just to turn them over so you can see where they all are. See, that's how we look at things. But it's much greater than that. We see things like the whole floor of this auditorium is full of jigsaw puzzle pieces that are about this thick. And God looks at it and He says, I know what it looks like. I've already seen when you put it together. It's going to take you forever to put it together. I've got a plan in all this, and I know what it looks like in the end, but you can't see that by just looking at the one piece. You've got to take a step back, and you've got to see the whole grand scheme as it relates to things. As far as the heavens are from the earth, my ways are higher than your ways. Job 34, verse 21. If you want to turn there, I'll read that. But when we look at Job 34, verse 21, that's of all people that we need to be studying, and we're reading about it right now in our daily Bible reading. Of all people that was able to understand the whole picture, that's Job, is it not? Who had everything taken away from him, who had everything that was removed from his life, his family, his wealth, in his mind, his dignity, his friends. And here he is with nothing as he sits in sackcloth and ashes, as he's in pain. And these three friends come and they're miserable comforters. Where they come and they just sit there and they're telling him everything he's done wrong. And Job wants to know what I did wrong. Job is wanting to know what's the purpose of all this. Why am I going through this turmoil? Why am I suffering through this pain? And at the end of the book, you see the picture that God's painting. He's saying, look, Job, I know this is miserable for you now, but I've got something in mind that's much greater than you are. The lesson that you are going through is going to help billions of people. Billions upon billions of people in their life. They're going to be able to see a little more glimpse of me, of God, and how I do things, and how I can take care of my people, and why suffering, and why pain, and why all of that stuff exists. They're going to see a little glimpse of that in your story, and you're going to help billions upon billions, and you can't see that now. You can't understand that now. But in the end, you will. And he says this, Job says this in Job 34, verse 21. For his eyes are on the ways of man, and he sees all his steps. He sees all of the steps of mankind. He's watching them, and he sees what's going on. Now look at Psalm chapter 53. Look at Psalm 53. I didn't put this one on the screen either. I wanted us to look in our Bibles for these. Psalm 53. Look at verse 2 and 3. God looks down from heaven on the children of man to see if there are any who understand, who seek after God. See, God looks down. He wants us to make these right choices. He looks down from heaven on the children of man to see if there are any who understand, to see if there's going to be anybody who's going to seek after Him. They've all fallen away. Together they have become corrupt. There is none who does good, not even one. Now he's talking about a different time here, but he's letting us know here, David's letting us know in this song, God looks down. And God is searching for us to be able, He wants us to make these right choices. And He's putting these right choices in our path. But He knows that for the most part, we're continually going to make the wrong ones. There's twice in the book of Proverbs you're going to have this. There's Proverbs 14, verse 12, and then it's also in Proverbs 16, the same verse. And it says, there is a way that seems right unto man, but the end is the way of death. God says, here I am. I have it for you. I'm watching your steps. I'm looking down, waiting for someone to make the right decision. And I know that the decisions that you make, I know that the ones you think are right, those are the ones that end up the way of death. I've seen it over and over again. So God says, take a step back. Church, look at your life and take a step back. Pause all of your thinking and take 4 or 5 steps back and look at the choices that you've been making. Are those choices that you've been making, have they been choices that are going to lead you closer to God? The purchases you made this last week, are those things that are going to bring you further away from God or closer to God? The places you've gone this week, are those places that are going to carry you further away from God, or is it going to bring you closer to God? The time that you've spent in your personal time, where you would either watch television or read a book or exercise or go to a movie or those things, or go shopping, or maybe did you spend it in some time with God? Are those moments of your life, those choices that you make in those small moments, are those things that are going to get you closer to God, that are going to get you closer to making the right decisions, or are those moments that are going to push you further away? God says, I know. I've seen it. I know. And you've got to look at it from my perspective. I read something from a warden at a penitentiary last week, just scanning some articles and stuff, and I came across an article from a warden of a large prison. It didn't say which prison it was, it just said it was a large prison. And one of the thing he said that was the most difficult part of his job, he says, the hardest, and I'm quoting him, the hardest part of my job is to convince youthful delinquents that they have done something wrong. See, the hardest part for us, we look at those people that are in prison, and this prison warden says, I'm trying to rehabilitate them. I'm trying to change them. I'm trying to teach them how to make those good choices. But they can't learn how to make good choices until they learn that the choices that got them here are wrong. You see? And we fall into that same picture. A lot of us, we come here to church and we're great and we're happy to be here, but we have a hard time pausing our life and taking a step back and saying, you know what? Those decisions I make, they were poor. They were poor. They did not carry me closer to God. In fact, they pushed me further away. I was selfish. I did things on my own. I gave into lust. I gave into my desires. I gave into my own passions. I gave into what I wanted, and I sacrificed the time that I could be using for God and bringing me closer to the Almighty, who sees all my steps, who knows all my things. It's hard for us to say, yes, Matt, this week, God, yes, I went down the wrong way. Matt, I went down the wrong way. I made the wrong choices today. It's hard for us to say that we're wrong, because what we try to do is we try to justify our wrong. Adam did it. Guys, it started at the beginning. Adam did it. When God came to Adam, and Adam's covered up in the leaves, and he's tried to cover himself, made for himself these coverings because his eyes were opened after he ate of the fruit. God says, Adam, did you eat of the fruit? See, God knew. God knew what he did. God knew exactly what Adam had done. He knew what the serpent said. He knew what Eve said to the serpent. He knew what Adam didn't do. He watched the whole thing play out. God was there. He saw it. And he says, Adam, did you eat of the fruit? And he wanted to see, I guess, if Adam was going to fess up and say, yes, I did, Lord, and I'm sorry. I made the mistake. You gave me one thing not to do, and I did the one thing I wasn't supposed to do. But this is what he said. You remember what Adam said? Have you ate of the fruit, Adam? God says, the woman you gave me, she gave it to me. It's not my fault. It's not, no, I wouldn't have ate it on my own, Lord. You know I wouldn't have done it on my own. If she hadn't have been there and offered it to me, I wouldn't. Well, if you want to go back to the basics, if you hadn't have made her, God, it's your fault that he didn't say it that bold, but that's how you could rationalize it, couldn't you? And we don't want to say we're sorry. We don't want to say we're sorry. I don't want to get involved in some more church where I don't want to do that because I don't like the direction they're going. Or I don't like the way Mac teaches. Or I don't like the way the sermons go. Or I don't like the decisions the elders make. And I don't like that. Those are all silly, ridiculous, stupid excuses, God says. Because you are the one that are responsible for your own life. Pause, take the step back, look at it, and try to see things from my perspective. And if you do that, you might. But he knows why it's hard on us. 1 John chapter 5, verse 19 says, we know that we are from God, but the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. God knows. The whole world lies at the feet of the evil one. That he is controlling this world. He is pushing this. You know, if you look at it as the world spinning, you know, like a top, it's like the devil is pushing that top to spin faster and faster and faster to push it further and further away from God. He's setting us up, church. He's setting us up. Remember when you keep going back to Adam and Eve, and I've been teaching a class on that again. It just brings it all fresh again, and you just see how things work, how the devil just lured Eve into that trap. Just lured her in. New Testament says that Eve was deceived, that she was tricked. That's what the devil does. He tricks us into thinking that the steps we take on our own are the steps that are okay. That a little here and a little there, that we're all right, that we're fine. He does that, and it leads us further away, and we're tricked. And it takes that aha moment. It takes that moment for us to pause and step back and say, wait a minute. I have not done what I needed to do to accomplish my goal of serving my Master. Seeing things from God's point of view certainly does help us do that. Because God's plan is laid out in that. Now look at Acts chapter 22 for just a second. Let's look at some New Testament passages here. In Acts chapter 22, this is Saul, who is now Paul, telling the story of his conversion. And I want you to see something here as he relays this story. As he's speaking to the people. In Acts chapter 22, and let's look in verse 12. And when Ananias, a devout man, this is the one who baptizes Saul, a devout man according to the law, well spoken of by all the Jews who lived there, came to me. This is after his light shining round about Saul on the road to Damascus, and God tells him to go to Ananias, and Ananias is going to tell him what he needs to do. He came to me, standing by me, and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And that very hour I received my sight. And he says, the God of our fathers has appointed you to know His will, and to see the righteous one, and to hear a voice from His mouth. For you will be a witness for Him to everyone of what you have seen and heard. And why do you wait? Rise and be baptized, and wash away your sins, calling on the name of the Lord. That verse 13 or 14. He said, the God of our fathers has appointed you to know His will. See, Saul was going in a different direction. Saul was persecuting Christians. You know the story. He was killing Christians. He was thinking he was doing what God wanted him to do because he did not accept Jesus yet. He didn't think Jesus was the true Son of God. But then Jesus comes to him on that road to Damascus and pointed out to him that he was making a mistake, that he was working against his own efforts of pleasing God. He was doing the exact opposite of pleasing God. And he points him in the right direction where Ananias is going to teach him the message of the gospel so that he can be saved, so that he can go and do what God wants him to do. And God says to Ananias you tell him this, that he has been appointed to me for a purpose. I have gotten something in mind for him later on that it's going to change and revolutionize the world by his teachings. I've got a plan for him to be my witness and carry the gospel to the Gentiles. I love these words. I love the meanings of words and looking at the definitions of the words and how they meant to them and what it meant to them and how maybe that differ from us a little bit. Because if I look at appointed, I think of somebody like in King Arthur's court, somebody who comes and they take the sword and I'm going to appoint you this or this, dub thee sir this or that. That's typically what I think of. Or I'm going to appoint you as chairman of a board, or I'm going to appoint you over this task over here. But that's not what it means here. This word appoint, when you look in verse 14, it means being made. All right, now you can still put that in there, but here's the concept that goes along with it. Being made by the course of a process. See, there's the difference. I'm going to make you this over the course of a process. That shows us, God says, I have a plan that's involved for your life. I've got a process. If you will just pause and take a step back and look at it from my point of view, you'll see that my process works every time. Every time. You may not win every battle, but you will win the war because I already have. Trust in my process. Look at it from my perspective. One more verse on this point, then we'll move on. I don't want to just beat it to death, but this Proverbs 19:21 through 23, we've already looked at it last week. Many are the plans of the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. What is desired in a man is steadfast love, and a poor man is better than a liar. The fear of the Lord leads to life, and whoever has it rests satisfied. He will not be visited by harm. The fear of the Lord leads to life, and whoever has it, you're going to rest satisfied. You may be, notice the verses, you may be a poor man, but you're going to rest satisfied, because a poor man sure is better than a liar. We just trust in His process. Then the next point that he shows us here is we watch this play out, this young man in chapter 7. We read in chapter 8 how wisdom cries out. How wisdom cries out, we need to just trust God and wisdom, His wisdom. To trust in His wisdom so that He can show us the way. Read something this week. This is kind of interesting here. Usually we think of wisdom that just comes from experience and age. Like it only comes from being older or being well-rounded. But that's not necessarily true, because sometimes wisdom comes in the most simplest of ways. It comes from these children, out of the mouth of babes, as they say. Patrick, age 10, said, "Never trust a dog to watch your food." That's wisdom. That's being smart. It's something obvious. Now, Michael, who's age 14, when your dad is mad and asks you, "Do I look stupid?" don't answer him. See, that's wisdom. That's wisdom, okay? Don't answer me. Michael said, "Never tell your mom her diet's not working." Wisdom. Another young boy, age 9, "Never hold a dustbuster and a cat at the same time." See, why would he say that? Because he's done it before. He's learned his lesson. Naomi at 15, "If you want a kitten, start out by asking for a horse." See? And she knows what she's doing. She asks for something big because she knows they'll settle for something little. All right? Lauren at age 9, "Felt markers are not good to use as lipstick." All right? You don't use that. Joel, age 10, "Don't pick on your sister when she's holding a baseball bat." All right? Another one, age 8. "Never try," well, I don't know why you would get to this point. This is some evangelistic kid here. "Never try to baptize a cat." Now, why do these people say that? Why, all these are silly, but they're real. They're good sayings because they're true. You don't pick on your sister while she's holding a baseball bat, because if you do, you're going to get a few teeth knocked out, just like I did like this. That's how he knows that. You never try to hold a dustbuster and a cat at the same time, because you see these claw marks? That's what I did, and this is what happened. And we look at that and we say, don't ever, if your dad asks, "Do I look stupid?" tell him, "Yeah, you do." Because you see this rear end is real tan right now? That's what happened. See, they learned their lesson because they went through the situation. Wisdom cries out to us sometimes in the most obvious, simplistic ways. Now, what we have to do is when we pause and we take a step and we look back at the situation, we're able to see it. But in the heat of the moment, we don't. We don't see it. In fact, we're immune to it. We ignore it. And here we have this young man, if you'll go back to Proverbs 8, here we have this young man who's being pulled away from this woman. And chapter 8 says, "Does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights beside the way, at the crossroads she takes her stand. Beside the gates in front of the town, at the entrance of the portal she cries aloud. To you, O men, I call, and my cry is to the children of man. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. Hear, for I speak noble things, and from my lips will continue what is right, for my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They're all straight to him who understands and right to those who find knowledge. See, here in the course of the story of the parable or the situation that Solomon sees, he says the young man is walking by and he's being led to the slaughter by this young woman. And he says, and wisdom's crying out. It's standing right beside of him. Don't do this. With every step, don't do this. Don't do it. Don't do it. Stop. Turn around. Go home. With every step he makes, he's trying to tell him out. And you know what happens? Does the young man see it? No. He has tunnel vision. He has tunnel vision, and he doesn't hear it because he's focused on himself and what he has. And that's what happens to us. See, wisdom cries out to us in the most simplistic ways. Even in out of the mouths of children, in the most easy ways, God offers us the way of escape. Every man is going to be tempted. You're going to be tempted, and there's no temptation that has taken man that not is common to every man. Every temptation you face is common. And God says, I'm never going to put you under a temptation where you cannot handle. I will always give you that release valve. I will always give you that way out. I will always give you that access door to take a side road and get out of Dodge. I will always give you that button that you can say, restart. It will always be right there. When you make those poor decisions, when you make those poor choices, I'm going to be right there. I'm going to have a way for you to stop and to get out. But we don't see it because we don't want to see it at times. And then we get mad and we say, I had no other choice. And we did. We did. You see, look, you get it here. It's trust in the Lord. With all of your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths. If we can simply just listen to the voice of wisdom, listen to what God has to say to us, we'll find out His way is the best way. If we just pause our lives and take a step back and try to see it from His perspective as the puzzle that is completed, we'll be able to see, I made a wrong choice here. Yeah. Puzzle piece didn't fit in God's plan there. Yeah. Need to pull that one out. Need to start over. And some of our puzzles are so disfigured, and we try to force those pieces in places that they can't go, and it looks so messed up that you got to start completely over from piece one. Because the opposite of trusting is ignoring, isn't it? The opposite of trusting somebody is simply ignoring it. This morning, as we come to the close of the lesson, I think we can all say, bless that poor soul of that young boy. He had no idea. When you think of that as how does it read? As an ox goes to the slaughter, that ox has no idea it's going to the slaughterhouse. You know, we go to the sale barn sometimes and we watch, and some of those steers that come out, and they're selling those steers, and you know, I know, those steers, they think they may be getting a good home, going to have a nice bale of hay and a nice bucket of feed, nice pond. They're going to be able to have a good time where they're going, but I know they're not going to be there long. They're going to be in the grocery store somewhere or in a fast food restaurant, and we're going to be enjoying the fruits of their labor. All right? We can see that, and you think, that poor thing has no idea what it's getting into. That's what God says with us sometimes. He watches us live our lives, and He watches us walk into a trap, and He's trying to scream, don't go, don't go. Matt, do not make that decision. Matt, don't say what you want to say. Think about it. Pause. Take a step back. Listen. Don't trust me. Don't ignore me. Listen to me. Listen to me. I have a plan, and my plan works. If we'll simply do that, our decisions will be that much easier, this much easier for us to make. So if you've made some poor ones, you have an opportunity this morning to start your puzzle piece. Start your puzzle over. Start with that first piece today. Fix your life. Ask God to forgive you of sin in your life. Move in a positive direction. Listen to His voice and start this journey that He can put you on that can make you something special, that can make you glorious in His plan, that can make your life a lesson for others to see so that you can do what He would have you to do and glorify Him. That's what He wants out of us. And if you need to do that, you can do that this morning. If you're not a child of God, if you're not a Christian, you've got to get into this puzzle. You've got to put yourself here by coming to Him, saying that you're not going to be able to do it yourself, that you need His help. Repent of the wrong in your life. Confess His name as Savior, and do like Paul did. Start your life over. You can do that through faith in Him, repenting of sin, confession, and having your sins washed away, just as He did. But it all starts with you. He knows, but He lets you make the decision. Trust Him. Trust wisdom as we stand and sing the invitation song.
You are the words and the music. You are the song that I sing. You are the melody. You are the harmony. Praise to your name I will bring. You are the Lord of lords. You are the mighty God. You are the King of all kings. So now I give back to you the song that you gave to me. You are the song that I sing.